so I've started to get a little more comfortable with this. But um, yeah, I'm gonna try in this video to take a really big idea in my head and try to condense it down, and put some things in context. I think I've been critical of you know trying to understand things that are out of context, and so rather than just be critical of that, I'm going to try to put some things in context. So, um, talked a little bit about my anti-war beliefs. I'm a believer in peace. If we give peace a chance, then I think we may all be a little surprised at just how contagious peace can be, um, while also realizing that war's complicated, and it's complicated by all of our beliefs, our very uh, jealously guarded beliefs that we hold. So I just wanted to try to put a little context on some things. So yeah, I talked a lot about the teachings of Jesus and how important uh, they are to me today, but also just how fascinated I am about learning more about the context in which those teachings were originally delivered, and how that's helped me um, try to find a more direct connection, to how to apply them today. I believe if we have a better context of the time of Jesus and the teachings of Jesus, then I can better apply the teachings of Jesus today in my own context. So yeah, let's just talk a little history. When I was a kid, I did not love history, but it was always just like a memorization of facts that I needed to get right in order to prove that I've absorbed the material. I didn't really think of history as this story, like some of the other stories that I found interesting. History didn't really come off as a story that I found interesting. It was like, this happened then, and then this happened then, and this happened then, and here we are. But I go back to the time of Jesus, and I try to think about, like, okay, what was sort of the immediate history just before that, and I talk about this intertestamental period, this time between the end of the Old Testament and the time of Jesus, and how there isn't any light really shed on that time in the Scripture. So yeah, I'll just maybe shed a little light on that time. So yeah, time of Jesus, born obviously, zero. There's been a lot of this, a lot of ink has been spilled on this idea of, well, was it really 3 BC and not 0, or exactly nailing that down. And a lot of that is just to try to bring the text into a more historical alignment. But yeah, I won't focus on the details. I'll just focus on a little bit of the bigger picture. So yeah, the obviously the Romans were in charge, and I mentioned that they had just gotten there. But what do I mean by the Romans just getting there? The time of Jesus was this shift. It was just this huge shift. The Roman Empire was brand new. The Roman Republic had just fallen at this time. So, what's a republic versus an empire? A republic, that's what we have That's the form of government we have is a constitutional republic. You have elected representatives that get together in an assembly and set law and policy. There may be a leader of that assembly. Rome had that during their republic. They had a consul that was similar to what we have with the president. Had veto authority and things like that. But then there was a Senate, similar to what we have with a Senate and the House of Representatives. So, at the time of Jesus, this was the time of Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar. This Roman Civil War. All of this was happening right around that time. So yeah, if you know a little bit about Caesar was a consul. He was a president, but he was taking the republic in a way where he wanted more and more power, and thought that it was not just something to do for himself, but it was required in order to change the direction of the Roman Republic and take it into a new age, and that's what Caesar did. He consolidated power. He was the leader of the church, was the leader of the Senate, was the leader of the military, was the leader of all of that, and through that tyrannical behavior, there was a group of people in the republic that said, no, this is not okay. We're gonna stop this. So he was assassinated, and that triggered a massive civil war within the republic between the people that supported this idea of Julius Caesar and this taking things in a new direction, and then there were the people who didn't want that to happen. And I think an important connection to make right at this point is all throughout the empire there were choices that had to be made by the local leaders and the governors and the sort of the puppet leaders that were put in place in all of these different areas of the empire, and Judea, Edom, all of these areas had representatives. So, in Jerusalem and in Judea, there were leaders there, and this was the very end of what was called the Hasmonean or Hasmonean. I never get the emphasis right on that. That dynasty of Jewish kings that had been in power for a little over 100 years. It was the very, very end of that dynasty, and like what happens all throughout history when one king dies and you're choosing the next king, that's not always as easy as picking the eldest son, and there you go. So yeah, there was a fight going on within the leadership of Judea, of what was a unified Israel then, during that 100-year period of the Hasmonean dynasty. Similar to the kind of time of King David, there was this push for unification of all the land, of all the people, and they had gone through their own civil war, which included, who got to choose, the high priest, and what did that mean to the faith of Judaism, who was in charge. The Sadducees had long been the connected to the rightful descendants of the priesthood, the Levite line, going all the way back into the inheritance of the tribes of Jacob. All of these things were a part of what was happening in that time immediately before the Romans. So yeah, the two brothers both tried to get on the right side of the Romans, and eventually the Roman who was who was the Roman general that was sort of conquering that part of the empire, was Pompey the Great. At the time when all that was happening, Pompey and Julius Caesar were buddies. Pompey was married to Caesar's daughter. They were working together before they became enemies in their own civil war. But yeah, the eventual decision on who would lead in Judea was made by Pompey. He picked a winner. That winner had asked for the priesthood and the kingship. Only got one, but it was a pretty good consolation prize because he ended up being in charge. But there was a lot of other things going on just south of Judea. There were this group of Edomites. The Edomites were the descendants of the Esau line. Again, if you go all the way back to Jacob, grandson of Abraham. Jacob was the descendant of Isaac that was given, or maybe not given, maybe used tricks and deception to inherit the birthright. That all went through Jacob's side, and then Jacob's 12 sons became the 12 tribes of Israel, and Judea is one of those 12 tribes. So, yeah, this other line, this Esau line, the Edomites, they were always neighbors, outsiders. They were people of the book. They were still in the Abrahamic line, but they weren't the chosen line. They had their own God that they worshiped, and they called by a different name than what the Israelites called God. But many people believe it was still ultimately a monotheistic religion that looked to this great God of Abraham. So, yeah, down in Edom, some political gamesmanship was also happening down there. They were pro Julius Caesar instead of pro Pompey. When Julius Caesar was murdered, they sort of figured out a way to be on both sides long enough until there was a winner, and eventually, the winner in history is Augustus, the nephew of Julius Caesar. He becomes the true first emperor of Rome right at the time of the birth of Jesus. So the king that would then come out of that Edomite line was a man named Herod the Great. Herod, in order to legitimize his kingship, married a princess of the Hashmonean dynasty to sort of bring his authority in line with the existing dynasty that was dissolving. So yeah, that is who Herod the Great is. Herod dies just before Jesus' birth. His land is split between two sons. The Herod you hear about in the Bible that kills John the Baptist, that meets with Jesus during the trial. He's kind of head of things up north. The brother that had taken over things down south in Judea, he'd already been sort of pushed aside, and a Roman governor was placed in that area, and wasn't Pontius Pilate originally, but Pilate took over that role by the time of Jesus' trial and crucifixion. But yeah, if you know just that much history, and there's so much more to that story, but if you just have that much of the history, that can give you a little bit more clear of an idea of just how upset. Some people probably were in that land at that time with who was in charge and who wasn't in charge. This idea of a king from Edom was just impossible for people to accept as legitimate. So any of the decisions that king made around who would be the high priest and who would not be the high priest, and whether or not the Pharisees were going to be considered legitimate teachers of the law, or if that was only going to be the Sadducees, all of that was happening at that time. So again, when you try to bring Jesus into that picture, his childhood, the childhood of John the Baptist, the eventual ministry of John the Baptist, sort of laying the groundwork for the ministry of Jesus. That was all happening at that time. So occasionally you'll hear people just sort of offhand, maybe it's a pastor or somebody doing a video that you're watching. They'll sort of say, well, yeah, Judaism, it was kind of like Christianity is today, and Judaism is today, and Islam is today. There are these differences within this one label of the religion. There are different sects, and sometimes those different sects have very important differences that definitely affect what it means to believe. If you don't believe a certain way, then you're following a lie, and this lie, the idea of following a false truth or a lie, is the fundamental basis of what's considered devil worship, or the worship of the dark forces, the worship of the father of lies. So it's not, we like to picture, human sacrifice and all these other extreme versions of devil worship when we think about this, but that's not really what that meant at the time. It was that you've been misled and you're following a false teaching, and that is the teaching of the darkness, the father of lies. So at that time, there were very, very strong opinions about who was following the truth and who was following lies, and so a big part of Jesus' message is that he believed the leaders in his time were following the father of lies, and it's very common to feel that way. But if you put Jesus in that time, you try to figure out, okay, there's truth, there are people who have that, and there are lies. The truth that Jesus believed would have been just a version of Judaism that pointed to the Most High God. He explains this as his Father, and he speaks very directly to two leaders, specifically the Pharisees. In John 8, I don't think he can make it any clearer. He tells them in John 8, you don't know me, you don't know my Father. You serve the father of lies, the person that, or the God that you follow is not my Father. You don't know me. You don't know my Father. You follow a false God. So that's not because the Pharisees were not trying. They had just fallen into a place where they no longer understood what was the truth, and he explains to them that, again, in chapter 8, he makes it clear, I'm here to be the light of the world, and light the way to my Father, and that through my message, I am the Word of God. You'll know the true Father through me. And yeah, the making that direct of a statement, we don't see a lot of that in teaching today when we're talking about Jesus and his time and what that means. But it's just a reminder of how some things just never change. We see this fight continuing today. When you're absolutely certain that you have it right and that you're doing God's will, it can justify. You can use that to justify a lot of horrible things, and I believe that's what's continuing to happen in my adult life. I've seen things go in a direction I wasn't prepared for it. Yeah, when I was a kid and I was watching Back to the Future, I was thinking about this the other day. There's these terrorists at the beginning, and that's where the plutonium comes from. It's these Muslim terrorists. That idea of the Muslims being these terrorists, that was right there. I was seeing that when I was very young. There were hijackings that were publicized, and these terrorists would hijack a plane and hold hostages and crash a plane, and these things were all highly publicized. And over several decades of this, we've built this image of the people of the Middle East as this terrorist group. We've heard all about the Islamic terrorism and their beliefs in jihad and all of this indoctrination to turn them into an other group and not view them as a neighboring group. There was all of these branches all throughout the Old Testament. You see this narrative that goes through the branch of what you would consider the winners, and the winners are writing the history all the way through. But all of these other sides, these other branches, they still exist, and they all believe that somewhere along the line, the winners in the Bible that continued to write the history and the prophecy, their story is now sliced off, and it's not there. It's in other texts, other history, and I think just learning more about those histories and what they believe and how similar they are in a lot of ways to these other stories that are within the branch that was the surviving history. I think it's important just to give yourself a chance to learn a little bit more about those, and then again come back to the teachings of Jesus about loving the one God, the true Father, the Creator of all, and also loving your neighbor as yourself. That the way that is explained by Jesus, those being the two commandments really to live by, is to love your God with all your heart, but also to love your neighbor as yourself. When you think about God being a universal God, a great oneness over it all, and neighbors not just being other people who believe in the same God, but the neighbors of that time were the Edomites. The neighbors of that time were the remnants of the Babylonian Empire that had fallen. Those people didn't just stay over in what's now Iraq. A lot of those people were forced out of their land, and some of those people had come into the land of Edom and the land of Judea and the lands farther north. This was a huge melting pot of different faiths and different people groups that were historically connected. So you don't have to love history. I do love history. As part of what helps me understand more and helps light the way as I'm trying to piece all of this together and put it in context so it has a deeper meaning for me. So yeah, you may be of a different faith than I am. You may be completely agnostic or atheist and don't really think any of this is connected to a true creator. It's just humans being humans, using excuses, faith being one to dominate and control. Regardless of your opinion, though, the more you learn about the history and putting things in context, the more you can sort of see how faith can be used to advance human agendas and dark worldly agendas rather than the agenda of a creator, which may have been the original point of those teachings, and it doesn't always play out where the original point of the teachings are applied by the followers of those teachings. Whew. All right, I've been feeling like there's so much to say here, and there's no way I can even get started. So this is just meant to be a start, putting some things out. I'm sure I'll go into a lot of those other things in more detail and maybe apply a little more direct interpretation. But yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about history. That's all just a snapshot. Hundreds of years of history after and hundreds of years before. Just color that picture in even more and make it more clear. So I'll probably do more of that. But yeah, that's just some thoughts sort of to get started on the history and the context of it all. I don't know how much this is going to shake whenever I eventually post it, but sorry, it's chilly and I've got a little bit of that that part of me that I talked about in one of the videos, this uncontrollable shaking that happens sometimes when I start talking about these things. I've been feeling in this video, so hopefully the technology stabilizes the video a little bit and it's not too annoying to watch. So anyway, thanks for listening. As always, I appreciate it. This is coming from a place of trying to bring things closer together, not divide farther. So yeah, I need to keep that in mind and remind myself of that. This is all about trying to bring things closer, not creating excuses to pick one side over the other. So hope it came off that way. We'll talk again soon about this, I'm sure. Thanks.